Andre Cole was 41 years old when two unmarked police cars pulled up to his driveway on an ordinary Tuesday morning. Plainclothes officers, a warrant, a locked metal toolbox inside his garage that he had never seen before in his life, and inside it, vacuum-sealed bags of methamphetamine. They told him they received an anonymous tip. He was handcuffed in his own driveway, in front of his own home, loaded into the back of a car, and processed like a criminal while his work truck sat running at the curb. His wife Patricia posted his bail without hesitating. No questions about the contractor's license. No questions about the business. No questions about their income. Just a transaction. Clean, prepared, and practiced. It wasn't until Andre sat across from his uncle that evening, phone records spread across the kitchen table, that the number surfaced. A prepaid burner phone, purchased 2 miles from their house, called 17 times in 6 weeks. His wife had made the call. She had built the cage. She had planted the lock. And she had stood beside him at the bond hearing performing grief she had never once felt. What she didn't know was who she had just woken up. Before we jump into the story, comment where in the world you are watching from and subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you need to hear. The lift hummed as it carried Andre Cole 60 feet into the morning air. Up here, the city looked clean, quiet. From the ground, the downtown job site was all noise and diesel smoke, and men calling out to each other across concrete. But up here, with his hands inside a 480-volt distribution panel, Andre was in his element, still, focused, completely certain of what he was doing. He worked without rushing. That was the first thing people noticed about him on a job site. He never rushed. His hands moved with the kind of calm that only comes from doing something 10,000 times, tracing conductors, checking torque, reading the panel the way other men read a newspaper. His apprentice Marcus had once asked him how he always knew exactly where to look when something was wrong. Andre had thought about it for a second. Then he said, "Because I don't start looking until I understand what I'm looking for." Marcus had written that down. The crew respected Andre the way men respect someone who has earned something, not because he was loud, not because he demanded it, because he showed up every morning knowing more than the drawings said, and leaving every job cleaner than he found it. Cole and Okafor Electric had been built on that, on Andre's hands and his reputation and his absolute refusal to cut corners on work that people's lives depended on. Dwayne handled the rest, the billing, the supplier contracts, the client relationships, the books. He was good at it, or at least he always seemed good at it. Dwayne could walk into any room and make people feel comfortable. He remembered names, he told good stories, he had a way of making a contract signing feel like a celebration. Andre didn't think much about the money side of things. He trusted Dwayne the way you trust someone you built something with from nothing. They had started with a used cargo van, a Home Depot credit account, and 2 commercial clients Dwayne had talked into giving them a chance. That was 7 years ago. Now they had 12 employees, a fleet of 3 vehicles, and a reputation that kept the phone ringing. Andre trusted that. He trusted what they had made. He descended the lift as the morning stretched toward noon, and his foreman Ray handed him a water bottle without being asked. "Panel's clean?" Ray asked. "It is now," Andre said. Ray nodded. That was enough. The drive home took 25 minutes. Andre used the time the way he always did, mentally filing away the day, logging what was finished, what needed attention tomorrow, what he'd noticed that nobody else had said anything about yet. Lately, he'd been filing away other things, too. Patricia had started wearing a new perfume sometime in the last 2 months, something warmer than what she used to wear. She hadn't mentioned buying it. He'd noticed it on a Tuesday evening when she walked past him in the kitchen and left a trace of it in the air. Something he didn't recognize, something that didn't match the bottles on her bathroom shelf. He hadn't said anything. She had become hard to reach between noon and 2. He'd call. It would go to voicemail. He'd text. She'd respond an hour later. In a meeting. Talk later. She worked in hospital billing. Meetings happened, but not every single day. Not for months without interruption. The explanations were never wrong exactly. They were just thin, like a paint job done too fast, smooth enough from a distance. But if you looked close, you could see where coverage got missed. Andre looked close at everything. It was not a choice. It was simply who he was. He pulled into the driveway and sat in the truck for a moment before getting out. The house looked the same as always. Brick front, clean gutters, the rose bushes along the porch that Patricia had planted the spring after they moved in. 4 years in this house. Before that, an apartment for 3 years. Before that, 2 people with nothing building toward something. He went inside. The kitchen light was off. No sounds from upstairs. He stood in the entryway for a moment, reading the quiet. There was a note on the counter, held down by the salt shaker. Went to Dana's. Wasn't feeling well. Don't wait up. P. He stood there and read it twice. Not because it was hard to understand, because he was making sure he understood it completely. Then he put the note down, washed his hands at the sink, and cooked dinner. Chicken, rice, a vegetable from the back of the refrigerator. He cooked enough for 2 out of habit, realized halfway through what he was doing, and didn't stop. He plated 1 portion, covered the rest, and put it in the fridge. He ate at the kitchen table. The chair across from him was empty. Patricia's chair. There was a small scratch on its left leg she'd been asking him to fix for 3 months. He kept meaning to get to it. He cleared his plate. He sat back down. He stared at that empty chair, and he was very, very still. The morning came in gray and cold. Andre was up at 5:15, same as always. Coffee first, then boots, then the slow ritual of loading the truck. Tools checked and organized in the same order he'd been doing it for years. Extension cords coiled tight. The meter bag zipped and clipped. Everything in its place. Everything accounted for. He was reaching into the cab to grab his work gloves when he heard the cars. 2 of them. Dark sedans, no markings. They turned onto his street at the same moment, like they'd been waiting around the corner for a signal. They pulled up smooth and unhurried, 1 in front of his truck and 1 at the curb behind it. 4 doors opened. 4 men got out, all plain clothes, all moving with that particular kind of deliberate calm that Andre recognized immediately, not as aggression, but as procedure. The one in front was heavy-set, with a gray mustache and a blue lanyard around his neck. He held up a badge and a folded document at the same time. Andre Cole? Yes. Warrant to search the premises, specifically the detached structure in the rear. He held the document out. We're going to need you to step to the side while we execute it. Andre took the warrant. He read it. Not scanning, actually reading, line by line, the way his Signal Corps training had taught him to process any document placed in front of him. The language was standard. The judge's signature looked right. The address was his. The probable cause section cited information received from an anonymous source. He folded it back along its creases and handed it over. The side gate is unlocked, he said. He stood on the driveway and watched them move through his property. 2 went around back. 1 stayed near the front door. The heavy-set detective, whose name was Briggs, based on the badge, positioned himself near Andre with the loose, practiced patience of a man who had done this many times before. Andre did not move. He did not speak. He thought about the garage. He thought about every item in it. The shelving unit along the back wall, the pegboard where his hand tools hung, the plastic bins labeled by category, the lawn equipment in the corner. He walked through it in his mind like a blueprint. He did not own a locked metal toolbox. One of the men around back called out. Just a short, flat Briggs. That was all. Briggs walked through the gate. Andre was not told to follow. He followed anyway. Briggs looked at him and didn't tell him to stop. The garage door was up. One of the detectives was crouched near the back wall, his gloved hands on a dark gray metal toolbox that sat on the floor next to the shelving unit. It was the kind of box a serious mechanic might own. Heavy gauge steel, combination lock on the front hasp, about 2 feet wide. Andre had never seen it before in his life. The detective had the lock cut. He lifted the lid. Inside, 4 vacuum-sealed plastic bags, each one the size of a hardcover book. The contents were pale and crystalline and unmistakable. Andre looked at those bags the way a man looks at something that was put there by somebody else. He felt no panic. What he felt was colder and more precise than panic. It was recognition. The understanding that something had been constructed here. That this was not accident or coincidence or bad luck. This was architecture. "Mr. Cole," Briggs said, "I'm going to need you to put your hands behind your back." He watched his wrists disappear behind him, felt the cuffs click into place, heard the neighbor across the street, Mr. Tillman, retired, walked his dog every morning at 6, go completely quiet mid-stride. The dog sat down on the sidewalk. Tillman just stood there with the leash in his hand. Andre didn't look away from him. He stood up straight. He let them walk him to the car. The holding cell was cold and smelled like bleach and old coffee. Andre sat on the bench and did not pace. He had one call. He thought for exactly 4 seconds about who to give it to. He called Uncle Chester. Chester picked up on the second ring, which meant he was already awake, which meant nothing surprised Chester at any hour. His voice was unhurried. "Talk to me," Chester said. Andre told him, clean and brief. The cars, the warrant, the garage, the toolbox, the bags. Chester listened without interrupting. When Andre finished, there was a short silence. Not confusion, but the sound of a man organizing information. Then Chester asked his 3 questions. "Did you touch the box?" "No." "Does Dwayne know where you keep your garage key?" Andre paused. The spare key lived on a hook inside the breaker box cover in the utility room. He had shown Dwayne that once, 2 years ago, when Dwayne had needed to borrow the cable puller for a job Andre wasn't on. "Yes," Andre said. Chester's voice didn't change. "Did Patricia know about the arrest before you called me?" Andre opened his mouth, then closed it. He had no way to know that. He had been in cuffs before he could reach for his phone. "I don't know," he said. Chester said, "Okay, I'll be there." The bond hearing was at 2 in the afternoon. Patricia walked in at 1:50. She was wearing a dark blazer over a cream blouse, hair pulled back, small gold earrings. Her eyes were red at the rims, just enough. She sat in the row behind the defense table and folded her hands in her lap. She looked exactly like a wife who had been crying in the car on the way over. The number the court set was manageable. Patricia stood up before the clerk finished speaking and confirmed she would post it. No discussion, no hesitation. Andre watched her from across the room and noted the efficiency of it, the way she moved through the paperwork with her pen already out, already uncapped. She didn't ask his attorney about the contractor's license. She didn't ask what the charge would mean for their insurance, or their bonding, or the 12 employees who depended on the business staying operational. A woman who had spent 9 years building a household around that business would have asked at least one of those questions. Patricia asked none of them. She touched Andre's arm in the hallway outside and said, "Let's just get you home." He sat in the passenger seat on the way back. The city moved past the window. Patricia drove the way she always drove. Careful, 2 hands on the wheel. Speed exactly at the limit. Andre looked at her hands. They were completely steady. Patricia left for work at 7:40. Andre watched her car back out of the driveway from the kitchen window. He stood there until the sound of her engine faded completely. Then he sat down at the table. Chester arrived 8 minutes later. He had a paper bag from the bakery on Merchant Street and a yellow legal pad tucked under his arm. He set the bag down without comment, poured himself coffee from the pot Andre had already made, and pulled out the chair across from his nephew. He uncapped a pen. He wrote one word at the top of the pad: timeline. "Walk me through your mornings," Chester said. "Exactly. What time you're up. When you go out to the truck. When you usually leave." Andre told him. 5:15. Rise. 20 minutes to load. Out of the driveway by 5:40. Sometimes 5:45. Chester wrote it down. That warrant cited an anonymous tip. Chester didn't phrase it as a question. Whoever called that in knew 3 things. He held up a finger. 1. That there was a detached garage on the property. Another finger. 2. Where to find the key. Third finger. 3. What time you'd be outside and exposed. He tapped the pen on the pad. That last one matters most. They didn't call it in the night before. They called it in that morning. 40 minutes before those cars showed up, give or take. Which means whoever made that call knew your routine well enough to time it. Andre said nothing. He was looking at the legal pad. That's not a neighbor with a grudge, Chester said. That's not a competitor. That's not somebody who heard something on the street. He leaned back in his chair. That is somebody who has been inside this house, somebody who knows how you move. The refrigerator hummed. Outside, a bird was working on something in the yard. Pull your phone records, Chester said. Patricia's line, last 60 days. Andre had access to the account. He always had. Patricia had never asked him to remove himself from the family plan, and he had never had a reason to go looking until now. He sat with his phone at the table and scrolled through her outgoing calls. Chester watched without hovering. It took Andre 4 minutes to find it. An unrecognized number. 10 digits, no name attached, no contact saved. The first call was 6 weeks ago. Then again, 2 days later. Then a gap of 4 days, then 3 calls in 1 week. Then steady. Sometimes once a day, sometimes twice. 17 calls total. The last one was placed 2 days before his arrest. Duration, 11 minutes. Andre set his phone on the table face up and turned it so Chester could see. Chester looked at the number for a moment. Then he took out his own phone and made a call. He spoke quietly to someone for about 90 seconds, read the number off twice, and thanked them. He hung up. Prepaid, Chester said. Purchased at a Shell station on Delmar Avenue? That's 2 miles from here, Andre said. 2 miles from here. Chester reached into the front pocket of the legal pad's cardboard backing and removed a single folded sheet of paper. He set it on the table in front of Andre without saying anything about it first. Andre unfolded it. It was a photocopy, a court document. The header identified it as a petition for a protective order, filed 3 weeks ago. Petitioner, Patricia Marie Cole. Respondent, Andre James Cole. The stated basis was fear of domestic violence. The language was measured and specific in the way that only drafted language is. Not a frightened woman's words, but a legal instrument designed to produce a particular outcome. It had been filed under seal. At the bottom, a handwritten notation from Chester's contact. Withdrawn. Day 4, following respondent's arrest on criminal charges. Andre read it once. He read it again. Not quickly. The same way he had read the search warrant in his driveway, line by line, giving every word the weight it carried. Then he set it down. He reached out and straightened it on the table. Just a small adjustment, aligning the edge of the paper with the edge of the table. The way a man tidies something before he puts it away permanently. He said, "Okay." Just the one word, flat and quiet and utterly still. Chester looked at him. He had seen that look before, on the back end of something that couldn't be undone. The look of a man who had just finished measuring something and found the number he expected, and was now deciding what to do with the measurement. He didn't ask Andre if he was all right. He knew better. He picked up his pen and wrote 2 more lines on the legal pad and let the silence be what it needed to be. After a while, Andre reached across the table. He picked up the restraining order application and folded it once along its original crease. Then he got up, went to the drawer beside the stove where Patricia kept the office supplies, and took out a manila envelope. He slid the paper inside. He held the pen over the front of the envelope for a moment. Then he set the pen down. He left the envelope blank. Patricia left at 7:40 again. Same time, same routine. Same quick kiss on the cheek that landed just slightly off-center, the way it had been landing for months now. Andre stood at the window and watched her pull out. He waited until the street was quiet. Then he went to the office. The office was what they called the spare bedroom. A desk, a filing cabinet, a second-hand bookshelf where Patricia kept binders from her job, and Andre kept the physical copies of the business records. He had never spent much time in here. That had always been the arrangement. Andre ran the field. Dwayne ran the numbers. It had seemed reasonable when they started. 2 men, 2 lanes, 1 company. He pulled the filing cabinet open. Chester arrived at 8. He brought the legal pad. They started with the supplier contracts. Chester sat in the desk chair. Andre sat on the edge of the desk itself, leaning over to read documents as Chester laid them out. The work was slow and quiet, the kind of work that requires full attention and produces no sound except the occasional turn of a page. The first thing Andre noticed was the material billing. On paper, Cole and Okafor billed materials to clients at cost. That was standard. That was what Dwayne had always told him, and Andre had no reason to look closer because the business was profitable, and the clients were happy, and the checks cleared. What he had not known to look for was the second layer. Chester found it first. He tapped a line item on a supplier invoice from a company called Meridian Electrical Supply. "Look at this price," Chester said. Andre looked. The invoice showed a unit cost for commercial-grade conduit. He knew what conduit cost. He bought it himself on smaller residential jobs. The number on the invoice was not what conduit cost. It was higher. Not by a lot, a percentage, not a doubling, but across a contract worth $80,000 in materials, a percentage was real money. Chester pulled another invoice. Same supplier, same pattern. "Meridian's giving Dwayne a rebate," Chester said. Dwayne inflates the invoice just enough that the client doesn't question it, pays Meridian the inflated number, and Meridian cuts him a check for the difference, under the table, doesn't touch the business account. He set the invoices side by side. He's been doing it every contract where Meridian supplied materials. Andre picked up both invoices and held them next to each other. His jaw was still. His eyes moved across the numbers carefully, the way they moved across a wiring diagram, looking for where the load was going that shouldn't be going there. "How long?" Andre said. Chester had already started on the calendar. It took them 3 more hours to build the full picture. 3 years of contracts, 14 projects where Meridian was the primary materials supplier. The skimmed amounts varied by job size, but the pattern never changed. Chester added the figures twice on the legal pad and got the same number both times. $180,000, give or take. Andre sat with that number for a moment. He didn't say anything. He turned it over in his mind the way you'd turn a stone over to look at what was underneath it. $180,000. 3 years. While Andre was 60 feet in the air, rewiring panels and managing crews, and signing off on inspections, and doing the work that kept every contract justified and every license current. He was the labor. He had always been the labor. He had just never understood that Dwayne knew it and used it. He photographed every document, every invoice, every bank statement, every supplier contract. He photographed Chester's handwritten calculations. He uploaded everything to a cloud account he created that morning, using an email address tied to nothing Patricia would recognize. Not his name, not the business, not anything she could find. When it was done, he stood up and stretched his back. The room had gotten dark without either of them noticing. Chester turned on the desk lamp. "Talk to me," Chester said. He said it simply, not as a push, just an opening, if Andre wanted it. Andre leaned against the door frame. He looked at the filing cabinet, all its drawers hanging open, all those years of paperwork spread across the desk like evidence at a scene. "She didn't just fall for him," Andre said. His voice was level. "She found a man she thought was sitting on money. Real money. And then she helped him clear me out of the way." He paused. "The arrest takes my freedom. The business, what Dwayne's got built, that takes my income. If I'm locked up and broke, whatever's left goes to her." He looked at Chester. They thought it through. Chester said nothing. He waited. Andre pushed off the doorframe. He walked to the desk and picked up the last bank statement. He looked at it once more, then set it down and squared the stack against the edge of the desk. "There's still more," Andre said. "Keep looking." Chester uncapped his pen. The tip file was thin. That was the first thing Pryor noticed. Most narcotics tips came in vague. A general address, a description, a name somebody heard somewhere. They came in with the rough edges of second-hand information. You could feel the gaps in them. This one had no gaps. Detective Angela Pryor sat at her desk on the 3rd floor of the district precinct and spread the file open under her lamp. The anonymous call had come in at 6:02 in the morning. Voice distorted, run through one of those cheap apps you could download in 30 seconds. The caller gave the responding officers the street address, the detached garage specifically, not the house, the garage, the location of the key on the interior hook just inside the side door, and the information that the suspect would be loading his work truck and could be approached in the driveway before departure. Pryor read that last part again. Could be approached in the driveway before departure. That wasn't a tip. That was a briefing. She pulled the arrest report and cross-referenced the timeline. Officers arrived at 6:15. Andre Cole was in the driveway loading his truck, exactly as the caller described. The garage key was exactly where the caller said it was. The toolbox was exactly where the caller said it would be. She tapped her pen against the edge of the desk. In 20 years of law enforcement, Pryor had worked 3 planted evidence cases. She recognized the feeling the way you recognize a smell, something specific and unpleasant that your body registers before your brain catches up. This felt like those cases. Clean, deliberate, the kind of precision that didn't come from watching a house. It came from living near one, or in one. She picked up the phone and called Patricia Cole. The interview took place 2 days later. Routine follow-up, Pryor told her. Standard procedure when a spouse is arrested. Just filling in background. Patricia Cole arrived at the precinct in a cream-colored blouse and pressed slacks. Her eyes were appropriately tired. She folded her hands on the table and answered every question with the careful patience of a woman who had thought about being in this room before she was actually in it. Pryor asked about their marriage. Patricia said they had been going through a difficult period. She said it with just enough hesitation to seem genuine. She said Andre was a good man, but that the stress of the business had changed him. Pryor wrote that down. She asked about the garage. Patricia said she rarely went in there. That was Andre's space. She wouldn't know where to begin with his tools. Pryor noted the phrasing. Wouldn't know where to begin. She asked about the arrest morning, where Patricia had been when she'd left the house. Patricia gave her a clean timeline. Left for work at 7:40. Didn't hear about the arrest until a colleague called her. Pryor asked if she had any concerns about what the charge might mean for Andre's contractor's license. Patricia blinked. I'm sorry? His contractor's license, Pryor said. A felony narcotics charge can trigger a review. Depending on how the board moves, It could affect whether Cole and Okafor can operate while the case is pending. Does that concern you? Patricia said, Of course. I've been focused on Andre. I haven't thought that far ahead. Pryor nodded slowly and wrote something down. She had thought that far ahead. Before she walked into the room, she had thought about every question a wife in Patricia Cole's position would ask unprompted. Income replacement, business insurance, whether the contractor's license suspension would affect their mortgage, 9 years of shared financial life, and a woman worried about her household would have those questions lined up before she sat down. Patricia Cole had not asked a single one, because she already knew the answers. She knew the answers because the collapse of the business was not a consequence she feared. It was a condition she had planned for. Pryor thanked her for her time. Patricia shook her hand with a firm, warm grip and said she hoped they could get this resolved quickly. Pryor said she was sure they would. The call from Chester came through a mutual contact. A retired investigator Pryor had worked alongside on a mail fraud case 6 years back. Chester didn't identify himself as Andre's uncle. He identified himself as a concerned party with documentation that was relevant to an active investigation. He said the information would be placed in her hands if she was willing to receive it. Pryor said she was. The envelope arrived at the precinct through a courier the following morning, addressed to her by name. Inside was a manila folder. No cover letter, no emotional appeal, just organized documents with numbered tabs. Tab 1, Prepaid Phone Purchase Record. Tab 2, Patricia's outgoing call log showing 17 calls to that prepaid number. Tab 3, the restraining order application, filed under seal, withdrawn post-arrest. Tab 4, a handwritten timeline, precise and clean, noting that the anonymous tip came in at 6:02 and that Patricia Cole, by her own account given to Pryor 2 days prior, had left the house at 7:40. A 40-minute window between tip and departure. Patricia had called in the tip and then gone home and waited. Then she left for work like it was any other morning. Pryor opened her desk drawer and took out a red pen. She circled the 40-minute window. She looked at it for a long moment. Then she pulled out a fresh legal pad and started writing. Andre made the call on a Tuesday afternoon. He was sitting at the kitchen table, Chester's yellow legal pad in front of him, a cup of coffee going cold at his elbow. He stared at Dwayne's name in his contacts for a moment. Then he pressed call and leaned back in his chair. Dwayne picked up on the second ring. "Brother." His voice was warm, big, the voice of a man who had been practicing easy. "How you holding up?" "Better," Andre said. "I've been thinking. I want to take everybody out to dinner. You, Miriam, me, and Pat. Nice place. I want to sit across from the people who showed up for me and actually say thank you. You know?" There was no hesitation, not even a breath of it. "Say no more," Dwayne said. "When?" Andre heard it immediately. The yes had come too fast. A man with a clean conscience might have paused, offered some small protest, said you don't have to do that, said let's wait until everything settles. Dwayne said yes before the question had fully landed. That told Andre everything he needed to know about how comfortable Dwayne had gotten. "Friday," Andre said. 7 o'clock. I'll make the reservation. "We'll be there," Dwayne said. "Looking forward to it, man." "For real?" Andre said goodbye and set his phone face down on the table. He sat with it for a moment. Then he picked up the pen and went back to work. The restaurant was the kind of place with low lighting and white tablecloths. The kind of place where the noise level stayed just low enough for conversation, but just high enough that you felt like you were somewhere worth being. Andre had made the reservation under his name. He arrived first, told the host there would be 4, and took his seat with his back to the wall. An old habit, one he'd stopped noticing years ago. Patricia arrived looking beautiful. She wore a dark blue dress and the perfume Andre had smelled for the first time 3 months ago and never asked about. She kissed him on the cheek. Her lips were dry. Dwayne and Miriam came in 4 minutes later. Dwayne had on a sport coat over a collared shirt, gold watch catching the light when he reached out to shake Andre's hand. His grip was strong, and his smile was wide, and his eyes moved to Patricia for exactly half a second before moving back to Andre. Andre smiled and clapped him on the shoulder. "Thank you for coming," he said. "Both of you." Miriam hugged him. She was warm and genuine. She said she was glad he was okay. She meant it. Andre could tell the difference. The first hour moved the way a good dinner is supposed to move. Wine arrived. Bread arrived. Conversation covered easy ground. A commercial project Dwayne mentioned, a trip Miriam was planning to visit her sister, Patricia, talking about a change in the hospital's billing system that had her team running circles. Normal things. Surface things. Andre asked questions. He laughed at the right moments. He refilled Miriam's glass without being asked. When the entrees came, he raised his glass. "I want to say something," he said. The table settled. "I've been sitting with everything that happened over the last few weeks. The arrest, the whole thing." He paused and shook his head slowly, like a man still making peace with it. "It shakes you. I won't pretend it didn't. But the thing that kept me steady, the thing that reminded me who I was knowing I had people in my corner." He turned to Dwayne. "This man," Andre said, and his voice carried real weight, "built something with me from nothing. You remember what we started with? One van and a Home Depot credit card that was almost maxed out by Tuesday." Dwayne laughed. It was a good laugh, natural sounding, but his jaw tightened just slightly at the corners. "We didn't know what we were doing," Andre continued. "We just knew we weren't going to stop." He raised his glass toward Dwayne. "To my partner." They drank. Andre glanced at Patricia. Her hand had shifted on her wine glass, fingers pressing a little tighter around the stem. He reached over and covered her hand with his. She didn't flinch. She turned her palm up and held his hand back, because she was good at this too. He knew that now. He had always known she was good at performance. He just hadn't known she'd been performing for him. He looked at her directly. "Let the moment sit." "I don't know what I'd do without you," he said. Patricia smiled. It reached her eyes the way practiced things reach your eyes when you've practiced them long enough. She squeezed his hand. Her grip on the glass tightened further. In the parking lot, the night air was cool and smelled like exhaust and rain somewhere close. Andre shook Dwayne's hand at the cars, firm, 2 pumps, the handshake of men who trusted each other. "Good night, brother," Dwayne said. "Good night," Andre said. He watched Dwayne's taillights disappear around the corner. He watched Patricia's car follow a moment later, heading home, expecting him behind her. Andre sat down in his truck. He didn't start the engine. He put both hands on the steering wheel and looked out through the windshield at the empty parking lot, the wet asphalt reflecting the restaurant lights, orange and gold in the puddles. A valet stand with nobody standing at it. A single light above the entrance, swaying slightly in the wind. He sat there for a long moment. Then he started the truck and drove home. The phone buzzed at 6:14 in the morning. Andre was already awake. He'd been awake since 5, sitting in the kitchen in the dark with a glass of water, listening to the house. Patricia was still asleep upstairs. He could hear the soft rhythm of the ceiling fan she kept running, even in fall. He picked up on the first ring. "Chester." "I got something." Chester's voice was quiet and flat, in the way it got when what he'd found was serious. Not excited, not rattled, just certain. "You need to sit down." "I'm sitting." A pause. Then, 3 months before they arrested you, Patricia filed a quitclaim deed application with the county recorder's office. Andre said nothing. Chester continued. She was trying to transfer the house. Sole ownership, her name only. She filed a power of attorney document with it, supposed to authorize the transfer on your behalf. Another pause. The signature on that power of attorney is not yours, Andre. The refrigerator hummed. Somewhere outside, a car passed slowly through the wet street. The clerk flagged it, Chester said. Rejected the application. But the document is still on record. The forged signature, the application, all of it sitting right there in the county recorder's file. Who's your contact? Andre asked. Woman I worked with 20 years ago. She didn't pull it for me. She confirmed it when I described what I was looking for. Chester's voice dropped a register. Forging a signature on a power of attorney to transfer real property. That's felony document fraud. 3 to 5 years. Andre looked at the table in front of him, the yellow legal pad, the pen, the manila envelope he hadn't written on yet. Okay, he said. Andre. I hear you, Chester. I know you do. A brief silence. I just want to make sure you understand what you're looking at now. This wasn't impulse. This wasn't a woman who made a bad decision in a bad moment. This was staged, start to finish. Andre understood. He had understood it in pieces over the past 3 weeks, each piece painful in its own particular way, each one requiring him to revise a version of his life he'd believed in completely. But now, the pieces weren't pieces anymore. Now it was a picture. He thanked Chester and told him he'd call later. He set the phone face down on the table. He sat for a moment in the stillness. Then he got up and started pulling documents. He spread them across the kitchen table in the gray morning light, one by one, in the order they'd arrived. First, the phone records. Patricia's calls to the prepaid burner. 17 of them, spread across 6 weeks. The last one placed 40 minutes before the officers appeared in his driveway. Second, the restraining order application. Her name. His name. Fear of domestic violence. Filed under seal 3 weeks before his arrest. Withdrawn after the arrest, because she hadn't needed it once he was in handcuffs. A backup weapon she'd built and holstered. Third, the bank statements. 3 years of Cole and Okafor's financials laid flat. The supplier kickback scheme mapped across them in Chester's precise handwriting on the legal pad. $180,000. Gone. Extracted. Every job Andre ran in the field had been funding a life Dwayne was quietly building without him. Fourth, the forged deed application. Chester had faxed him a copy through a secure line at 6 in the morning. Andre smoothed it flat on the table and looked at the signature line. The handwriting was close. Somebody had practiced it. The clerk had still caught it. A notary seal that didn't match the county's registered records, but it had been close enough to try. He looked at all of it together. The arrest eliminated his freedom. The forged deed was supposed to transfer the house. The restraining order application created a domestic violence record to weaponize in the divorce. Dwayne's financial control would strip the business down to nothing he could claim. They hadn't just betrayed him. They had engineered a disappearance. They had planned to take his home, his company, his credibility, and his freedom, and leave behind just enough of a paper trail to make it look like he'd brought it on himself. They had built a cage. They had furnished every room. Andre gathered the documents into a single neat stack. He squared the edges. He slid them carefully into the manila envelope. He picked up the pen. He wrote 2 words on the front. Per request. He set the pen down. He looked at the envelope for a moment. Then he reached for his phone. He scrolled to Miriam Okafor's number. Not Dwayne's, not Patricia's. Miriam's. A woman who had laughed genuinely at dinner 2 nights ago and refilled her own wineglass and had no idea what her household had been built on. He pressed call. It rang once. It rang twice. Andre? Miriam's voice was warm but slightly puzzled. They didn't call each other directly, had no reason to. Andre said, Miriam, I need to meet with you. Just you. Today. The coffee shop was on Del Mar, halfway between Andre's house and the hospital where Miriam worked. Small place. Wood floors, mismatched chairs, a chalkboard menu above the counter. Not the kind of spot where anyone from their circle would walk in unexpectedly. Andre arrived 11 minutes early and chose a corner table facing the door. He ordered black coffee and set the manila envelope flat on the table beside his cup. He did not open it. He just waited, the way he had learned to wait, without fidgeting, without rehearsing, without letting the weight of what he was about to do show anywhere on his face. Miriam came through the door at 1:03 p.m. She was still in her work clothes, navy blazer, cream blouse, a bag over her shoulder. She spotted him immediately and crossed the room with the kind of walk that told you she'd already decided to hold herself together before she got here. Whatever she'd been imagining since his phone call that morning, she had made a decision about how she was going to sit through it. Andre stood when she reached the table. "Thank you for coming," he said. She sat down across from him. She looked at the envelope. She looked at him. "Tell me," she said. He didn't hand her anything yet. He started talking. He spoke plainly, the way you explain something to someone who deserves the unvarnished truth. No drama in his voice. No anger. He told her about the supplier kickback arrangement. A vendor named Tilson Materials preferred contracts routed exclusively through them. Inflated supplier invoices reconciled against a private account Dwayne held separately from the business. He told her the number. $180,000 over 3 years. He said, "That money came from the business, which means it came from your household." Miriam's face was still. Her hands were flat on the table. He opened the envelope. He placed the bank statements in front of her first. Cole and Okafor's operating accounts, with Chester's notations in the margins, amounts circled in red, dates flagged. Then the supplier contracts. Then the account statements for the private account Dwayne had opened at a credit union across town. Then a phone record printout for a second device, a burner, purchased at a gas station off Highway 40, registered to an address that didn't exist, that had been in regular contact with the Tilson Materials procurement manager. He placed each document down slowly. He didn't stack them. He wanted her to be able to see them all at once. "Your children's college accounts," he said. "The contributions Dwayne said he was making each quarter. I pulled the account numbers from the business records where he logged them as a household expense. I can't pull the statements directly, but your forensic accountant can. And when they do, I believe they're going to find the deposits either never came or came short." Miriam looked down at the documents. She read. She read everything once, slowly, moving from page to page without shuffling or rushing. Then she went back to the first page and read everything again. Andre drank his coffee and didn't speak. He let the documents do what documents do when they are accurate and complete, and placed in front of someone with the intelligence to understand them. When she finished the second pass, she set the last page down carefully. She looked up at him. "How long have you known?" Her voice was even. Not cold. Even. "Long enough," Andre said, "to make sure everything I'm giving you is airtight." Miriam looked at him for a moment. She wasn't searching his face for something hidden. She was just taking inventory, deciding what kind of man she was sitting across from, and what she was going to do with the next hour of her life. She nodded once. "Who is your attorney?" she said. Andre took a card from his breast pocket and slid it across the table. "Marcus Webb, attorney at law, civil and family litigation." Miriam picked it up and placed it in her bag without looking at it again. Then she gathered the documents from the table, every page, in the order Andre had laid them down, and she squared them the same way he had at the kitchen table that morning. Precise. Deliberate. She slid them into the envelope herself and folded the flap closed. She stood up. "Thank you, Andre," she said. Not warmly, not coldly, the way you thank a person who has handed you something heavy and necessary and true. Andre stood. He didn't say anything else. There was nothing else that needed saying. He watched her walk out through the glass door, back straight, bag on her shoulder, the manila envelope tucked under her arm like she'd carried it 100 times before. She turned left on the sidewalk and disappeared past the window. Andre sat back down. He wrapped both hands around his coffee cup. The coffee had gone lukewarm. He drank it anyway. After a while, he left cash on the table, picked up his keys, and walked out to his truck. He drove home to Patricia. The kitchen light was on when Andre pulled into the driveway. He could see Patricia through the window over the sink. She was moving around in there, opening a cabinet, closing it. The ordinary motions of a woman making dinner in her house. Their house. He sat in the truck for a moment. Then he picked up the manila envelope from the passenger seat, got out, and went inside. The kitchen smelled like the garlic and olive oil she used whenever she made pasta. A pot was on the stove. She had changed out of her work clothes into a gray cardigan and jeans. Her hair was down. She looked up when he came in. "I made enough for 2, she said. "Okay," Andre said. He set the envelope on the table. He took off his jacket, hung it on the back of the chair, and sat down. Patricia watched him from across the kitchen. Her eyes dropped to the envelope, then came back up to his face. Something shifted behind them. Barely, quickly, but it was there. She had good instincts. She just trusted her performance more than her instincts. She turned the burner down and came to the table. She sat across from him. Andre slid the envelope toward her. "Open it," he said. She looked at him for a beat. Then she reached out, unfolded the flap, and pulled the papers out. He watched her read. The phone records were on top, the prepaid number. 17 calls over 6 weeks. She went through them slowly, her face composed, and turned to the next document. The restraining order application. Her name at the top. His name below it. The typed allegations that described a man she had invented. A version of Andre Cole who had never existed anywhere except on those pages. She read it without blinking, set it aside. The quitclaim deed application came next. The forged power of attorney. Her attorney's contact information printed neatly in the filing header. She paused on this one a second longer than the others. Then she reached the last document, the transcript. It was 4 pages. Chester had formatted it cleanly. Date, time, location at the top. Then the conversation laid out in 2 columns, Patricia on the left, Dwayne on the right. Andre watched her read the part where Dwayne said she should give it 2 more weeks before she starts the paperwork. Let the charge settle first. He watched her read her own response. What about the house? I need that sorted before the hearing. He watched her reach the bottom of the last page. She set it down. She looked up at him. Her jaw was set. Her eyes were steady. She had made a decision about what posture to take, and she was committed to it. You can't prove I made that call, she said. Andre reached into his jacket pocket and set his phone on the table. He opened an audio file and pressed play. The voice that came through the speaker was filtered, slightly flattened from the enhancement process, but the cadence was unmistakable. The rhythm of it, the particular way she stretched the last word of a sentence when she was trying to sound uncertain. There's narcotics. In the garage. He keeps a spare key under the left rear wheel well of the truck. It ran for 41 seconds. Andre stopped the playback. Patricia said nothing. That's from the tip line recording, Andre said. Pryor had it enhanced. Not courtroom ready, not yet. But it doesn't need to be courtroom ready tonight. He folded his hands on the table. The DA's office is reviewing the case. The toolbox had no fingerprints matching me. Not on the box. Not on the bags. The call log and the deed application have both been submitted to the DA. Pryor is pushing for the investigation to pivot. He paused. The forged signature on the power of attorney is a felony. 3 to 5 years. The restraining order application, filed in bad faith, then withdrawn after the arrest, is documented obstruction. Dwayne is already in front of the licensing board. Miriam's forensic accountant is going to confirm the diversion in writing within the week. The business is finished. Patricia's jaw tightened. "What do you want?" she said. "What is it you want from me?" Andre looked at her. He took a slow breath. "Nothing," he said. "I don't want anything from you. I'm done wanting things from you." He said it without cruelty, without satisfaction. It was simply the truth, stated plainly by a man who had already made his peace with it. "I want you to understand what the next 6 months look like," he said. "I want you to sit here with that information before you decide what your attorney advises. Because whatever move you make from this point forward, you're making it with a full picture." He stood up. He lifted his jacket off the back of the chair and put it on. He picked up his truck keys from the table. "My attorney will be in touch," he said, "about the dissolution." He walked down the hallway and out the front door. He backed out of the driveway without looking at the house. The kitchen light was still on behind him as he pulled into the street and drove toward Chester's. The coffee was still hot. Andre could tell by the way the steam moved, thin and steady in the cool morning air, rising off the rim of the mug in a slow curl before disappearing. He watched it for a moment. Then he picked up the pen. The notepad in front of him was half filled. 3 columns: client name, projected hours, materials estimate. His handwriting was small and even, each number lined up clean. He had been out here since 7. It was almost 9 now, and he didn't feel the time. That was new. Or maybe it was old, something that had come back to him now that the weight was gone. The charges had been dropped 8 months ago. The DA's office issued a 1-paragraph statement. Insufficient evidence to sustain prosecution. Case dismissed without prejudice. Pryor's supplemental investigation had done what Andre built it to do. The forensic evidence didn't match. The tip line recording didn't hold up under scrutiny as anonymous. And the timeline Chester constructed made the alternative explanation impossible to ignore. The case against the unknown tipster remained technically open. Andre didn't ask about it. He didn't need to. Patricia's attorney had moved fast once the DA's office started looking sideways at the planted evidence. The deal came together quietly. Reduced charge of document fraud, the forged power of attorney the centerpiece of it. 18 months of supervised probation. A fine she would be paying off for the better part of 2 years. And the background check, which the hospital ran automatically when the charge appeared, which ended her job there without anyone needing to make a single phone call. She was in an apartment on the east side of town now. Andre didn't know which building. He didn't need to know that either. The house was his. Her attorney had accepted the dissolution terms without contest, which didn't surprise Andre. Given the alternative exposure, the house was the least complicated thing to give up. He had repainted the front room in November, a deep gray-green that Patricia never would have chosen. He liked it. Cole and Okafor was gone. The name had been retired as part of the civil settlement. The licensing board suspended Dwayne's contractor's license pending a full state hearing, a process that, from what Chester had heard through his contacts, was not going in Dwayne's favor. Miriam's forensic accountant had filed a complete audit confirming the $180,000 diversion, every transaction documented and dated, and the civil judgment that came out of it would follow Dwayne like a shadow for years. He had already sold his truck. Andre hadn't spoken to Dwayne since the night of the dinner. He didn't think about it much. Dwayne had made himself into a lesson, and Andre had learned it. And that was the end of what Dwayne was useful for. The new business didn't have a sign yet, just a name registered with the state, a new insurance policy, and a truck with a magnetic door panel that said Cole Electric in clean white letters. 3 commercial clients on the books. The first one had called 2 weeks after the charges were dropped. The second had called a week after that. Both of them former Cole and Okafor accounts. They hadn't waited long. The third was a referral from one of the first 2. Andre wrote the hours estimate for the third client into the column and ran the total. He looked at the number for a moment. He wrote it again at the bottom of the page and circled it. The back gate opened. Chester came through it with a cloth grocery bag in each hand, moving at the unhurried pace of a man who had nowhere more important to be. He was wearing his old green jacket, the corduroy one with the collar turned up, and his reading glasses were pushed up on his forehead the way he always forgot them. He looked at Andre. Then he looked at the notepad. "You're smiling," Chester said. Andre glanced down at the page. He hadn't noticed. "I'm working," he said. Chester set one of the bags down on the porch step and adjusted his grip on the other. He looked at Andre with the particular expression he'd been wearing for 40 years, somewhere between amusement and deep satisfaction, the face of a man who had watched something long enough to understand exactly what he was seeing. "I know," Chester said. "That's why." He picked the bag back up and went inside. The screen door swung shut behind him with a soft click. Andre looked out at the yard. The garden ran along the back fence. Tomatoes, a row of basil, the rosemary bush that had gotten out of hand on the left side. Patricia had planted all of it the second summer they lived here, on a weekend when she'd been in a good mood, when things had still made sense. He had kept it through the fall. He kept it now. Plants didn't have anything to do with who wronged you. They just grew. They just needed water and light and someone willing to show up for them. He picked up the pen. He went back to work. I hope you enjoyed that one. Be sure to like the video and subscribe so you don't miss the next story. I've picked out 2 more for you that I think you'll really like.